Hello and welcome to the sideboard here at Star City Games, Edison, New Jersey, otherwise known as the Snopin series. I am here with someone that I've interviewed in the Northeast before and who always brings an interesting little brew to the table. We've decided to call this deck True Blood because it's got a lot of vampires and it's got a Tibalt the Fiend-Blooded, which is
so much spice.
Which is a little bit of a unique choice, let's say. So tell me about where your idea for this deck came from.
Okay, so originally this was a just a straight up Grixis Pack Rat deck because I've been wanting to play Pack Rat for the longest time because I'm a huge fan of that card. And then once Gatecrash came out, everybody had such speculation on Duskmantles here, and it just seemed weird to me because it's a flying Dark Confidant, and Dark Confidant's arguably the best creature of all time, and you're going to give him flying and make him a 4/4, and I was like, sure, gotta play that card.
Yeah,
so that's the card that inspired me to want to play this deck, and then I just tweaked it to get the curve lower, though I wasn't hitting myself too much with him. And he has like some crazy interactions that we'll talk about when we get there.
Right, and it's no longer a Pack Rat deck. In the main deck, we'll get to Pack Rat about the sideboard. But right now, it's basically a Grixis control deck, splashing green just for Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, the Deathrite Shaman, the activation for green is super relevant, just because the damage that you take off Duskmantle Seer in a really aggressive format, that incremental difference is huge, and it was worth splashing green for.
Right, and you've got other life gain cards in it. You have the actual life gain of Vampire Nighthawk.
Yeah, and Vampire Nighthawk is awesome because everybody's maining Pillar right now for humans and all that stuff. So if they don't have Spear, they just don't deal with it, and then you can't outrace it.
Yeah, and then you've also got Knight of Infamy, which is very solid right now in a format full of Loxodon Smiters and Boros Reckoners, although that's not ideal.
It's not ideal, but it's better than not because he stays on the ground, and then it still has like pseudo haste amongst the other one. Like
more importantly, it deals with Champion of the Parish.
It really, any of those guys, it's awesome against. And it was actually a last-minute addition because I was trying to figure out what I was considering Crimson Muckwader, that's how it's pronounced, as my 2-drop because I wanted another 2-drop. And then somebody recommended Knight of Infamy to one of my guys, and it's been working out so far because hitting for 3 in the air is really good.
Yeah, and so the last thing we were talking about before was Duskmantles here and some tricks you can do with it.
Yeah.
One of the better tricks you can do with it is Dimir Charm. You can either set yourself up to be able to not take as much damage or dig for a certain spell, or set your opponent up to take 1,000,000 damage.
What's awesome is that, in the late game, you can really set up your Duskmantles here to just blow them out. And what's also amazing about Dimir Charm, which I use more often than I thought I would, is if there is any stumble on mana, Dimir Charm just punishes you because I'll look at the top 3, put your 2 land into the yard, and then you're just out of the game.
So it's a lot like Portent in that way.
Very much, yeah.
In that you can ponder for yourself to be able to dig into another land, or you can just set your opponent back. If you miss a land, you're not getting another one.
And I think it's like one of the most interesting cards to play with because depending on the scenario, oftentimes I'll use it mid-game to like find an Aristocrat or find the Duskmantle Seer when I have the opportunity to slam a threat.
Right.
And then you don't want to I want to take advantage, and Dimir Charm lets you do that.
Now, in this format, we have a very aggressive format right now. We've got Flinthoof Boar, Hellrider, Thundermaw Hellkite, Lightning Mauler, lots of instant or
Ash Zealot.
Ash Zealot. You need lots of instant speed ways to deal with Guy. Talk to me about your elimination suite, the split between instant and sorcery, and what instants you decided to play.
So I wanted, considering that I was running a deck that's like a little bit more, like it's streamlined, but it's a little bit more all over the place. There's a lot more things. I thought the charms were definitely where I wanted to be. One, because Dimir Charm works so well with Duskmantles here, but then also this can dig. It also shocks, so it's good in the early game. Since this is where I want to be.
We're talking about Is It Charm?
Is It Charm? Yeah, Is It Charm can shock, but Dimir Charm also hits with power 2 or less. Something relevant that came up was I hit a Rock's Faithmender once with it, which is a cool thing.
That's pretty good.
And then the milling ability is actually works well with Deathrite Shaman if you need a certain activation, because draining them from 4 or something like that is really useful. So that's early game removal. Or if I need to go sorcery speed, just the Mizium Mortars. This is really my Wrath. I want to hang on to it for my Wrath if I can. And then Victim of Night, I'll sandbag if I think you're playing Hellrider or Thundermaw or something like that.
Victim of Night's an interesting one to be playing right now instead of Ultimate Price.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't hit Boros.
It doesn't. Yeah.
Or this hits Boros.
Victim of Night hits Boros Reckoner, and because I'm a very, very heavy black deck, I can support the double black, which a lot of people aren't able to.
All right. Last thing I want to talk about in the main deck.
Yes.
This guy right here,
Tibalt. He is a fun. Okay, so Tybalt is one of those cards where everybody's like, he's so bad. He's so bad. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't protect himself. He costs double red, which is the worst mana cost you can have on a card. And I look at him, and I see something that people don't see. I see value in his second ability that people overlook, because the random ability on the loot is fine for me. I'll take it. I have Deathrite Shaman. That works. He digs me deeper to the threats. That's fine. His second ability is why he's in the deck. With Duskmantle Seer, I was originally playing Searing Spears because I wanted to have the extra reach. I wanted to have the burn. And then I was just getting blown out by Boros Reckoner. And so I was like, okay, let me put in the Victim of Nights, and then I'm going to put in Tybalt. One, because in the early game he'll dig me when I don't need that reach, but then in the late game when I have him on 4, because people, who's attacking Tybalt? And if they are, awesome. You just saved me like indirect life that I would have lost that now I can now take.
This is also a life gainer.
It's a life gainer, yeah. And so like to dome them for like off
to
the
dome them for
4,
45, yeah. So if they draw Thragtusk off their Duskmantle
and then you shoot
and another card, and then you shoot
and like it's one of those things where people think that they're so far behind when somebody casts a Sphinx's Revelation, and I'm like, well, yeah, because they're up on cards. But if they're tapping out to do that, if they don't deal with Tybalt, then immediately it's like, okay, well, I'm going to dome you for that life you just lost, and then bash your face if you didn't wrath.
Right.
So it's like, he's good as a one-up. I would really like to pick him up as a 2-up, but in a format that's really aggressive. Once it teeters off into a little bit more of a slower format, then I'll go with that.
So let's go to the sideboard.
Let's do it.
You have a one-of in the sideboard that you seem to like a lot.
Yeah.
That would be Packrat.
That would be Packrat.
I actually just watched you win a game in which the guy just had no outs to Packrat.
If you untap with Packrat, it's kind of like untapping with name a card that wins the game, because that's really what it is.
It's like untapping with a... Well, it's like... Okay.
It's like untapping with Jace the Mind Sculptor.
Well, you get
can't
to
lose.
untap and draw a Mirror Regery for the rest of the game.
That's what's really nice is that it's kind of like having Future Sight, because you don't know what the top, like your opponent's top decking. You're not. You know you're drawing with Packrat, which is great.
The rest of the sideboard, what's Appetite for Brains mainly for?
Appetite for Brains is for any of the mid-range red-green decks, because now that those are running Gorklan Rampager, they're running Hellriders, Gorklan, and Thundermaw. You can hit those. Any of the mid-range decks that are running Huntmaster, Thragtusk, any of the control decks that want to run any Rats to stop your guys.
Sure. Rakdos Charm for the graveyard strategies, I assume?
Rakdos Charm for the graveyard strategy, because there's that combo Angel deck that I thought was good, and I only committed 2 to that because I have Deathrite Shaman to also mess with them.
You also have Slaughter Games to be able to deal with Angels if you need to.
And one thing that's really cool about Slaughter Games is if you have a Duskmantle Seer on the table, they flip whatever they flip, and then you can just name it with, so you know you're getting value and remove their stuff. Yeah, so that's where it's like a cool little trick that happens.
So yeah, there's lots of cool stuff going on here, and it may look random, but it's a lot of 4-ups. So
it's a lot of 4-ups.
Very consistently weird.
It's exactly like, I know what my curve is going to be. The only downside about the deck right now that I would want to tweak is the mana base, because it's so heavy, is I often want to land a Deathrite turn 1 just because it's the most mana efficient thing to be doing.
And you've only got 9 ways.
Right, so I'm always going to be shocking myself to get him on turn. So I have to make up the life gain, which isn't too hard, but if I could, I would want to tweak the mana base a little bit more.
So you said you had some help building this deck.
Yeah.
Seems like you would need some help.
This is not an easy deck to build and find that it's consistent enough. I wanted to thank my buddies Fluff Rabbit and Johan for legitimately their real names. Fluff Rabbit and Johan, thank you guys for helping me build this.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, this deck looks like a blast to play.
It's awesome.
12 vampires and Tybalt.
Tybalt is a thing.
True blood. So you might want to try this one out. Give it a try. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.